The crystal chandelier above the marble floor shattered into 1,000 pieces as 7-year-old Minjun Park ducked beneath the flying debris, his small body pressed against the legs of the woman who had become his entire world in just 6 months. Moona Jackson's arms wrapped protectively around the boy as gunfire erupted through the Seoul penthouse, her heart hammering against her ribs while she whispered prayers in English that the child couldn't understand but felt in every trembling syllable. This wasn't how she'd imagined her life would turn out when she'd arrived in South Korea 8 months ago, desperate and broke, clutching a one-way ticket and a dream that had long since faded. But life had a way of writing stories nobody could predict, and hers had begun to change the moment Minjun had looked up at her with those dark, lonely eyes and asked in hesitant English why she was always smiling when everyone else in his father's house looked so sad. Welcome to Afrokorean Stories. If this is pulling you in, hit that subscribe button right now because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty. Now, as bullets tore through the expensive artwork and marble columns, Moona realized that smile might have cost them everything. 6 months earlier, Moona had stood in the lobby of Park Tower in the heart of Gangnam, her hands shaking as she clutched the single page that had brought her halfway across the world. The job posting had been simple: live-in domestic staff needed for prominent household, generous salary, discretion required. She'd applied on a whim, never expecting a response, but the email had arrived 3 days later with a plane ticket attached and instructions to report for an interview upon arrival in Seoul. Mrs. Kim, the head housekeeper, had studied Moona with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. "You speak Korean?" she'd asked in English. "Only a little," Moona had admitted, her stomach twisting with anxiety. "But I'm a fast learner. I have my degree in child development, and I worked as a nanny in Atlanta for 5 years before the family moved to Europe." "Mr. Park's household is not like other households," Mrs. Kim had said carefully, switching to Korean and speaking slowly enough for Moona to follow. "There are rules here that must never be broken. You will see things, hear things, but you will speak of none of it. Not to your family back home, not to friends, not to anyone. Do you understand?" Moona had nodded, thinking of her younger sister's college tuition and her mother's mounting medical bills. The salary being offered was more than she could make in 3 years back in Georgia. "I understand." "Good. You start tomorrow. Your primary responsibility will be maintaining Mr. Park's private living quarters. He has a son, 7 years old. The boy keeps to himself mostly. It's better if you don't try to engage with him unnecessarily." That first month had been a lesson in navigating invisible boundaries. The penthouse occupied the top 5 floors of the building, a masterpiece of modern Korean design mixed with traditional elements that spoke of wealth beyond Moona's comprehension. She learned to move through the space like a ghost, cleaning and organizing while the household's complex hierarchy played out around her. There were the security guards who never smiled, the business associates who came and went at odd hours, and Mr. Park himself, a man whose presence filled every room he entered even when he said nothing at all. Jae-sung Park was 36 years old, though he carried himself with the gravity of someone much older. Moona had researched him before accepting the job and found only carefully curated information: successful businessman, philanthropist, widower. What she hadn't found were the rumors, the whispers about his real business, the connections to organizations that operated in shadows. But she'd seen enough in her first weeks to understand that whatever empire Jae-sung Park commanded, it wasn't built entirely on legitimate foundations. And then there was Minjun. Moona had first seen the boy on her 3rd day, sitting alone in the massive library that overlooked the Seoul skyline. He'd been reading a book in English, his small face scrunched in concentration, and something about his isolation had pierced straight through every professional boundary she'd been taught to maintain. "That's a hard book," she'd said softly in English, unable to stop herself. "Are you understanding it okay?" Minjun had looked up, startled, his eyes widening at hearing his second language spoken with an American accent. "You're from America?" "Georgia," Moona had confirmed, smiling. "And you're reading Harry Potter in English. That's really impressive." "My mother used to read it to me," Minjun had said quietly, his voice carrying a weight no 7-year-old should bear. "Before she died." Moona's heart had cracked right then. "I'm so sorry, honey." "It's okay. Father says I shouldn't talk about her. It makes him sad." The boy had paused, studying her with an intensity that reminded her of his father. Why are you different from the other staff? What do you mean? You smile. Everyone else here looks scared. The observation had been so astute, so painfully honest, that Muna hadn't known how to respond. Maybe I just haven't learned to be scared yet, she'd finally said. Minjun had considered this seriously. You should. Father's business is dangerous. That's what I heard Mr. Kong say to Mrs. Kim. Heavy footsteps had echoed in the hallway, and Minjun had immediately straightened, his expression shuddering. Jae-sung Park had appeared in the doorway, his sharp gaze moving from his son to Muna with unmistakable suspicion. Minjun, your tutor is waiting, he'd said in Korean, his voice carrying quiet authority. Yes, father. The boy had gathered his book and left without another glance at Muna. Jae-sung had remained, studying her with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. Miss Jackson, he'd said in perfect English. Mrs. Kim informed you that interaction with my son is not part of your duties. She did, Muna had agreed, lifting her chin despite her racing pulse. I apologize. He looked lonely. My son's emotional state is not your concern. With respect, Mr. Park, every child's emotional state should be someone's concern. Something had flickered in Jae-sung's expression, surprise perhaps, or irritation. You presume to lecture me about my own child? I presume to care about a little boy who's reading his dead mother's favorite book alone in a room bigger than most people's houses. The words had come out before Muna could stop them, and she'd braced for termination. But Jae-sung had simply studied her for a long moment before speaking. You have a degree in child development. It wasn't a question, but Muna had nodded anyway. Yes, sir. From Spelman College. And you left your previous position because? The family relocated to London. They offered to sponsor my visa, but my mother was diagnosed with cancer. I needed to be closer to home, but also needed to make enough money to help with her treatment. She'd paused. This job offered both the salary and the distance. Distance from what? From watching her suffer and not being able to do anything about it. Jae-sung had been quiet for so long that Muna had wondered if she'd said too much. Finally, he'd spoken. My son has had 3 nannies since his mother died. None of them lasted more than 2 months. He's difficult, withdrawn. The therapists say he's depressed. He's grieving, Muna had corrected softly. There's a difference. And you think you can help him? I think he needs someone who sees him as more than a problem to be solved. Another long silence. Then Jae-sung had nodded once. Your duties will expand to include time with Minjun. 1 hour each afternoon. You will report to me directly about his progress. Any concerns, any changes in behavior, anything at all, you bring to me first. Understood? Yes, sir. And Miss Jackson? His eyes had locked with hers. In this house, caring too much can be dangerous. Remember that. The weeks that followed had transformed Muna's existence in the Park household. Her afternoons with Minjun became the highlight of both their days. She'd help him with his English homework, introduce him to new books, and slowly, carefully, create space for him to talk about his mother without fear of causing his father pain. She was beautiful, Minjun had told her one rainy afternoon while they made paper cranes together. Everyone says I look like father, but I have her smile. That's what grandmother says. I bet your mother was very proud of you, Muna had said gently. Father doesn't like when I talk about her. I think it hurts him too much. Grief is like that sometimes. It feels so big that we think if we talk about it, it'll swallow us whole. But actually, talking about the people we love keeps them alive in our hearts. Minjun had looked at her with those 2 old eyes. Do you talk about your father? Mrs. Kim said he died when you were young. I do. I tell my sister stories about him all the time. About how he used to make us pancakes every Sunday, and how he'd let us stay up late on Fridays to watch movies, and how he gave the best hugs in the whole world. I wish I could talk about mother like that. Maybe we can practice together. You can tell me about her, and I'll tell you more about my dad. Deal? Deal. Their bond had deepened week by week, but Muna had also become increasingly aware of Jae-sung's presence in her life. The evening reports had started as brief, professional exchanges in his office, but gradually evolved into something more complex. They'd discuss Minjun's progress, yes, but their conversations would drift toward other topics. Books they'd both read. Differences between Korean and American culture. The challenges of raising a child alone. Jae-sung would lean back in his chair, his severe expression softening incrementally, and Muna would find herself noticing things she had no business noticing. The way his hands moved when he spoke. The rare smile that transformed his entire face. The intelligence behind every carefully chosen word. Minjun asked about his mother's grave today. Muna had reported one evening 3 months into her expanded role. I told him I thought visiting her might be something he and you could do together. Jae-sung's expression had tightened. I haven't been to her grave since the funeral. Why not? Because standing there makes it real in a way I can't afford. He'd paused, then added quietly, my world doesn't allow for weakness, Miss Jackson. Grief is a luxury I can't indulge. With respect, Mr. Park, grief isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. And teaching your son to bury his feelings instead of processing them is going to hurt him in the long run. You speak very freely for someone in your position. You told me to report any concerns. Well, I'm concerned. Minjun needs his father to show him that feeling sadness doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Jae-sung had stood abruptly and walked to the window overlooking the city. Do you know what I do, Miss Jackson? The real business, not the corporate facade? I have suspicions. I run one of the largest criminal organizations in Seoul. I make decisions that affect thousands of lives. People fear me, respect me, or hate me, but they never see me as weak. Because the moment they do, the moment I show any vulnerability, my enemies will strike. And everyone I love becomes a target. Is that what happened to your wife? The question had hung in the air like smoke. When Jae-sung finally turned back to face her, his expression was carved from stone. Yes. She was killed because someone wanted to hurt me. They succeeded. I'm sorry, Muna had whispered, her heart aching for this man who carried so much pain beneath his armor. Don't be. It was my fault. I should have protected her better. I should have kept her away from my world entirely. His eyes had met hers, dark and intense. Which is why I'm telling you this now. The closer you get to my son, the closer you get to me, the more danger you're in. If you want to leave, I'll give you 6 months severance and a glowing reference. No questions asked. Muna had thought about it, truly considered walking away from this complicated, dangerous situation. But then she'd thought about Minjun's smile when she read to him, the way he'd started laughing again, the trust growing between them. I'm not leaving, she'd said firmly. Why not? Because that little boy needs me. And honestly, Mr. Park, I think you do too. Jae-sung had stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. Miss Jackson. He'd stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. I need you to understand something. In my world, people use whatever leverage they can find. If my enemies discover that you matter to me, that my son cares for you, they will use you against us without hesitation. Then we'll be careful. Careful isn't always enough. Then we'll be smart. We'll be vigilant. But I'm still not leaving. The air between them had crackled with something electric and dangerous. For a moment, Muna had thought Jae-sung might kiss her, might close the distance and acknowledge the attraction that had been building between them for months. Instead, he'd stepped back, his mask sliding back into place. Very well. But from now on, you'll have security detail whenever you leave the building. And you'll take self-defense lessons with Mr. Kong. Is that necessary? In my world, Miss Jackson, it's essential. The weeks that followed had been strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Minjun had blossomed under Muna's consistent care, his smile coming more easily, his nightmares less frequent. Jae-sung had begun joining them for dinner several times a week, and Muna had watched father and son slowly, tentatively reconnect. But she'd also seen more of Jae-sung's other life. The late-night meetings with dangerous-looking men. The phone calls conducted in rapid Korean that made his expression go cold and hard. The way he'd leave the penthouse wearing violence like a second skin and return hours later with blood on his cuffs. "You should be afraid of me," he'd said one night after such an outing. They'd been alone in the kitchen, Muna making tea while he washed his hands with methodical precision. A rational person would be terrified. "I am afraid," Muna had admitted. "But not of you. I'm afraid of losing what we've built here. This family, this sense of belonging. I haven't felt this way since my father died." Jae-sung had turned to face her, water still dripping from his hands. "This isn't a family, Muna. This is a cage disguised as a home." The use of her first name had sent warmth flooding through her chest. "Then why do I feel more free here than I ever did back home?" "Because you don't understand what you've walked into." "Then explain it to me. Stop protecting me from the truth and just tell me." So he had. For the next 2 hours, Jae-sung had laid out the reality of his empire. The protection rackets and the gambling operations, the political connections and the violence that maintained it all. He'd explained how his wife had been killed by a rival organization, how he'd spent 2 years hunting down everyone responsible, how he'd built his power on a foundation of fear and blood. "I've killed 17 people," he'd said flatly. "Some deserved it. Some were just in the way. And I'd kill 17 more if it meant keeping Minjun safe." "I understand," Muna had said quietly. "Do you? Do you really understand that being part of this world means accepting that I'm a monster? You're not a monster. You're a man who's done monstrous things to protect what matters. There's a difference." Jae-sung had stared at her as if she'd spoken in a language he couldn't comprehend. "How can you look at me and not see the blood on my hands?" "Because I also see the way you read to your son at night when you think no one's watching. I see how you've memorized his favorite foods and make sure they're always available. I see a father trying desperately to keep his child safe in a world that wants to hurt him. That's not a monster, Jae-sung. That's love." He'd crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, his hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "You're going to destroy me, Muna Jackson. You're going to tear down every wall I built and leave me completely exposed." "Good," she'd whispered. "Because you've been alone long enough." The kiss had been inevitable, urgent, desperate with months of suppressed wanting. Jae-sung had kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, his hands tangling in her hair while she pressed closer, closer, closer. When they'd finally broken apart, both breathing hard, his forehead had rested against hers. "This changes everything," he'd said. "I know. My enemies will target you. I know. I can't promise you safety. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for honesty." Jae-sung had pulled back to look at her, his dark eyes searching hers. "I'm falling in love with you." "No, that's a lie. I fell in love with you months ago, and I've been fighting it because I knew it would only bring you pain." "Then stop fighting," Muna had said simply. "Let me in, Jae-sung. All the way in. Let me be part of your life, your real life, not just the pretty facade you show the world." "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do. And I'm asking anyway." They'd kept their relationship secret for 3 weeks, stealing moments when Minjun was asleep or occupied with his tutors. But Muna had known it couldn't last. Love like theirs, burning bright and desperate, couldn't remain hidden forever. The truth had come out on a Thursday evening when Minjun had burst into Jae-sung's study without knocking, excited to show them a painting he'd created. He'd found them standing close together, Jae-sung's hand on Muna's cheek, their lips inches apart. "Father?" Minjun had said, confusion clouding his features. "Miss Muna? What are you doing?" They'd frozen, caught between truth and deception. Muna had been the one to move first, kneeling to Minjun's level. "Your father and I care about each other very much, sweetie. Is that okay with you?" Minjun had looked between them, his young mind processing rapidly. Like how mother and father cared about each other. "Not exactly the same," Jae-sung had said gently. "But yes, something like that. Does this mean Miss Muna will stay forever?" The question had hung in the air, weighted with meaning. Muna had looked up at Jae-sung, seeing her own uncertainty reflected back. "I hope so," Jae-sung had said carefully. "If that's what everyone wants." Min-jun had surprised them both by grinning, a real, genuine smile that lit up his entire face. "Good. I was going to ask if she could be my new mother anyway." That night, after Min-jun had gone to bed happy and excited, Jae-sung had pulled Muna into his arms. "We're really doing this," he'd said. "Building something real in the middle of all this chaos." "We are," Muna had confirmed. "And we're going to make it work." "How can you be so sure?" "Because we love each other. Because Min-jun needs us both. Because some things are worth fighting for." Jae-sung had kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I love you, Muna Jackson. God help us both, but I love you completely." "I love you too," she'd whispered against his lips. "All of you, even the dangerous parts." But 2 weeks later, the dangerous parts had come crashing into their carefully constructed happiness with devastating force. Muna had been in the garden with Min-jun, teaching him about different plants, when Mr. Kong had appeared with panic etched across his usually stoic features. Inside, now, he'd ordered in Korean. "We have a situation." The next few minutes had blurred together. Armed men storming the building. Gunfire erupting through the penthouse. Jae-sung appearing from his office already armed, his face a mask of cold fury. They'd been forced into the study, the safest room in the house, while chaos erupted around them. "How many?" Jae-sung had asked Mr. Kong, his voice deadly calm even as bullets shredded the expensive furnishings. "At least 15. They hit all our weak points simultaneously. Someone gave them our security protocols." Choi, Jae-sung had said, the single name carrying the weight of betrayal. "He's been planning this since I refused his alliance." The power had died, plunging them into darkness illuminated only by emergency lights. Min-jun had pressed against Muna's side, trembling but silent. She'd wrapped her arms around him, whispering reassurances in English while her mind raced through scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. "There's too many," Mr. Kong had reported after checking with his team. "We're running out of ammunition." Jae-sung's jaw had tightened, his mind clearly calculating odds and outcomes. "Get them to the panic room. I'll hold the door." "No," Muna had said sharply. "We're not splitting up. Muna, I need you to trust me." "I do trust you. That's why I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself for us." Before they could argue further, a voice had called from the hallway. "Park Jae-sung. Send out the woman and boy, and we'll make this quick. Keep fighting and they'll suffer before they die." Jae-sung's response had been to put 3 rounds through the doorframe. "Come take them if you can." Min-jun had tugged on Muna's sleeve. "Miss Muna, the computer. Father showed me the emergency system." Muna had looked at the laptop still running on battery power, an idea forming. "Can you broadcast from it?" To everyone in Father's network, Min-jun had confirmed. They'd worked quickly while the men held the door. Min-jun had activated the emergency broadcast system, and Muna had helped him face the camera. When he'd spoken, his voice had been clear and steady despite his fear. "My name is Park Min-jun. I'm 7 years old. These men are trying to kill my father and Miss Muna because they want to take what doesn't belong to them. If anyone can hear this, please help us. Please don't let them hurt my family." The broadcast had gone out to hundreds of contacts simultaneously, business associates and rival organizations and law enforcement officials all receiving the same desperate plea. Within minutes, the sound of helicopters had filled the air. Jae-sung's allies, responding with unprecedented speed to protect one of their own child, had converged on the building. The siege had ended in less than 30 minutes once reinforcements arrived. Choi and his men had been either killed or captured, and the Park family had survived. But as they'd stood in the destroyed study, watching emergency crews work around them, Muna had felt something shift inside her. "This is our life now," she'd said quietly to Jae-sung while paramedics checked Min-jun, "this constant threat, this violence. Can we really raise a child in this world?" Jae-sung had looked at his son, then back at her, and she'd seen the same struggle playing out on his face. I don't know, he'd admitted. But I know I can't keep doing this. I can't keep putting you both at risk. Then what do? We change. I change. I find a way to step back from the organization, to transition to legitimate business. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but for you and Minjun, I'll find a way. 4 months had passed since that terrifying night. Jae-sung had been true to his word, gradually shifting his business interests toward legitimate enterprises. The process had been complicated, requiring delicate negotiations and strategic alliances, but with each week, his world had become incrementally less dangerous. Now, Muna stood in front of a full-length mirror, adjusting the emerald green dress Jae-sung had insisted on buying for tonight's event. A charity gala for underprivileged children, hosted by Seoul's elite. It was their first public appearance as a couple, and Muna's stomach was twisted with nerves. You look beautiful, Jae-sung said from the doorway, looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored black suit. I look terrified, Muna corrected, smoothing her hands over the dress. That too. He crossed the room and took her hands. But you also look like you belong exactly where you are. By my side. These people are going to judge me. Let them. I don't care what they think. You might not care, but I do. I'm an American woman, black, with no wealth or connections, dating Korea's most notorious bachelor. The gossip sites are going to have a field day. Jae-sung cupped her face gently. Muna, listen to me. I spent 2 years not caring about anything except revenge and survival. You taught me how to live again. You gave my son his smile back. Whatever anyone else thinks doesn't matter because you're the most important person in my world. Before Muna could respond, Minjun bounded into the room wearing his own miniature suit. Are we ready? I want to see the art museum. The gala was held at the National Museum of Korea, and as their car pulled up to the red carpet entrance, Muna felt her anxiety spike. I don't think I can do this. Yes, you can, Jae-sung said firmly, taking her hand. You're Muna Jackson. You've survived my world this long. You can handle a few hours with Seoul's elite. The evening had started well enough. Jae-sung had moved through the crowd with easy confidence, introducing Muna as his partner. Minjun had charmed everyone with his perfect manners and bright intelligence. But Muna had felt the stares, heard the whispers. Some were simply curious, but others carried an edge of judgment that stung more than she wanted to admit. The auction had been underway for about an hour when something caught Muna's attention. A particularly expensive item, a week-long vacation package to a private island resort, was being auctioned off. The bidding had started normally enough, but then Muna had noticed something odd. Every person bidding was a woman, and they were all looking at Jae-sung with expressions that made her blood run hot. What's happening? She'd whispered to Mrs. Kim, who was seated nearby. The older woman had leaned closer. The package includes a personal escort. Mr. Park donated it before he met you. It was meant as a joke, but these women are taking it very seriously. Muna had felt something fierce and possessive rise in her chest. 500,000 won, a beautiful woman in a red dress had called out. Going once, the auctioneer had announced. Without thinking, Muna had stood up. 1 million won, she'd said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. Every head had turned to stare at her. The auctioneer had looked flustered, unsure how to proceed. But Muna had kept her eyes locked on Jae-sung, seeing surprise and admiration warring in his expression. I'm bidding 1 million won, she'd repeated, louder this time. For a week with my man. And I'm making it very clear to everyone here that Park Jae-sung is taken. Completely, utterly, irrevocably taken. By me. The room had erupted in shocked whispers, but Jae-sung had stood as well, his face breaking into a rare, genuine smile. Sold, he'd said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. To the woman who already owns my heart. Before Muna could sit back down, Jae-sung had taken her hand and led her toward the stage. Her heart had pounded as she'd realized what he was about to do. Ladies and gentlemen, Jae-sung had said, taking the microphone from the stunned auctioneer. I want to thank you all for your generous support tonight. This cause is particularly important to me because I've learned firsthand how education can transform lives. He'd paused, his eyes finding hers in the crowd. But I have another reason for being here tonight. 4 months ago, I made a decision that changed everything. I decided to step back from certain aspects of my business and focus on building something better. Something legitimate. Something I could be proud of. Min-jun had appeared at his side, and Jae-sung had lifted him up so everyone could see. My son taught me something important about courage. He taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love over fear. Choose connection over isolation. Choose the people who make you better over the ones who keep you comfortable. Moona's eyes had filled with tears as she'd realized where this was going. Min-jun, Jae-sung had said, handing the microphone to his son. Do you want to tell everyone what you told me this morning? Min-jun had taken the microphone with both small hands. I told father that I want Miss Moona to be my real mother. Not just someone who works for us, but my actual mother who stays forever. The room had gasped collectively, but Min-jun hadn't finished. Miss Moona makes the best chocolate chip cookies in the whole world, and she reads stories with funny voices, and she taught me that missing my first mother doesn't mean I can't love a second mother too. And I love her so much. Jae-sung had taken the microphone back, his voice thick with emotion. What my son is saying is what I should have said months ago. Moona Jackson, you walked into our lives when we were both drowning in grief and isolation. You taught us how to live again. You showed us that love isn't something to fear, but something to celebrate. He'd reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, and Moona's knees had nearly given out. You've given my son a mother he deserves, and you've given me a reason to become the man I want to be. You've made me believe in second chances and new beginnings. Opening the box, he'd revealed a stunning diamond ring surrounded by emeralds. Moona Jackson, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Min-jun's mother, and the heart of our family for the rest of our lives? The room had been so quiet that Moona could hear her own heart pounding. She'd looked at Jae-sung, standing on stage with his heart in his hands, at Min-jun, whose face was bright with hope, at the life they were offering her. It was complicated and unconventional and probably still dangerous. But it was also real and beautiful and everything she'd ever wanted without knowing she wanted it. Yes, she'd said, her voice steady and sure. Yes, I'll marry you. Both of you. All of us. The applause had been deafening as Jae-sung had jumped down from the stage and swept her into his arms, spinning her around while Min-jun cheered. When he'd set her down, he'd slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly. I love you, he'd whispered against her ear. More than I thought I could ever love anyone again. I love you too, she'd whispered back. Every complicated, dangerous, beautiful part of you. Min-jun had thrown himself at both of them, wrapping his arms around their legs and looking up with pure joy. Can I call you mom now? For real? Moona had knelt down to his level, cupping his precious face in her hands. You can call me mom, and I'll call you my son. Because you've been mine in my heart for a long time already. Really? Really? From the moment you asked me why I smile when everyone else looks scared, you've been my son. I love you, Mom, Min-jun had said, the words sounding natural and right. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. As they'd stood there surrounded by applause and celebration, Moona had marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. She'd come to Seoul desperate and alone, looking for a way to support her family back home. Instead, she'd found a family here, in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected people. A lonely child who'd needed a mother, a grieving man who'd needed someone to see past his armor, a woman who'd needed a purpose beyond survival. Now they were going to build something beautiful together. Not perfect, because nothing involving Jae-sung's world could ever be entirely safe or simple. But real and honest and founded on love that had grown from the unlikeliest of beginnings. Hey everyone, if you're loving this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our emotional stories. And please, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Your support means everything to us and helps us keep creating these powerful romance stories. 5 years later, Moona stood in the kitchen of their new home in Jeju Island, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. They'd moved here 3 years ago, when Jae-sung had finally completed his transition away from his criminal empire. He now ran a legitimate security consulting firm and had become one of Seoul's most prominent advocates for criminal justice reform. "Mom, is breakfast ready yet?" Min-jun called from the living room, where he was helping his younger sister with her homework. "Almost, sweetheart," Muna called back, smiling at how naturally the word mom still made her heart flutter even after 5 years. Little Nari, their 3-year-old daughter with Jae-sung's dark eyes and Muna's warm brown skin, was arguing with her brother in a mix of Korean and English. "But I want to draw flowers, not practice letters." "Father said education is important," Min-jun replied patiently. At 12 years old, he'd grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young man who spoke 3 languages fluently and had recently started volunteering at a local children's center. Jae-sung appeared in the kitchen doorway, loosening his tie after his morning video conference. His legitimate business empire had flourished beyond anyone's expectations, and he was now recognized as one of South Korea's most successful entrepreneurs and philanthropists. "How was the call?" Muna asked, rising on her toes to kiss him hello. "Productive. The youth center project in Busan is moving forward ahead of schedule." He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her close. "We'll be able to provide job training and education for 200 at-risk teenagers by the end of the year." The youth center was Jae-sung's latest passion project, a comprehensive program aimed at helping young people escape the cycle of poverty and crime that he knew too well. It was his way of giving back, of building something good from the ruins of his former life. "I'm proud of you," Muna said softly, her hand resting over his heart. "Every day, I'm so proud of the man you've become." "I'm only this man because of you," Jae-sung replied, his voice rough with emotion. "You saved me, Muna. You and Min-jun, you saved my life." "We saved each other," she corrected, leaning into his embrace. "Mom. Dad. Nari drew on my homework again." Min-jun's exasperated call made them both laugh. "Duty calls," Jae-sung said, but he didn't let go immediately. "I love you, Muna Park. Every single day, I love you more." "I love you too," she whispered. "Always." As they moved to join their children in the living room, Muna reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. From that first day in the Seoul penthouse when she'd been just another employee trying to remain invisible, to this moment, surrounded by the family she'd never expected to find. The path hadn't been easy. There had been difficult conversations with her mother and sister back in Georgia, who'd struggled to understand her choice to stay in Korea with a man whose past was so complicated. There had been adjustment periods as she'd learned to navigate Korean culture and language, moments when she'd felt like an outsider despite Jae-sung's unwavering support. There had been lingering threats from Jae-sung's former associates, requiring them to maintain security measures even in their peaceful island home. But through it all, they'd had each other. Jae-sung had proven time and again that his commitment to change was real, that his love for her and their children was stronger than any pull from his former life. Min-jun had blossomed into a remarkable young man who treated Muna not as a replacement for his birth mother, but as an equal addition to his heart. And little Nari, their miracle baby who carried both their bloodlines, was a daily reminder that love could create beauty even in the most unexpected circumstances. "Family meeting," Jae-sung announced, gathering everyone on the sofa. Nari climbed into his lap while Min-jun sat close to Muna, and for a moment they were all together in perfect contentment. "What's the meeting about?" Min-jun asked, his English still carrying that slight Korean accent that Muna found adorable. "Your mother and I have been discussing something important," Jae-sung said, his hand finding Muna's. "We want to know how you both would feel about expanding our family." Min-jun's eyes widened. "Are you having another baby?" "No," Muna said with a laugh. "But we're thinking about adopting. There are so many children in Korea who need loving homes, and we have room in our hearts and our house." "I think that's wonderful," Min-jun said immediately, his face lighting up. "I always wanted more siblings." "Me too," Nari shouted, though at 3 years old she didn't fully understand what they were discussing. "There's something else," Jae-sung continued, his expression becoming more serious. "I've been approached by a documentary filmmaker. They want to tell my story, how I left the criminal world and built a legitimate life." It would mean going public with parts of our past that we've kept private. Why would you do that? Minjun asked, concern flickering across his young face. Because there are young people out there making the same choices I made, thinking there's no way out. If my story can help even one person choose a different path, it's worth the discomfort. Jae-sung looked at Muna. But this decision affects all of us. If we do this, our lives will become more public. There will be judgment, criticism, probably threats. Muna thought about it carefully, weighing the risks against the potential good. Finally, she spoke. I came to Korea running from pain and looking for a way to survive. What I found was purpose, love, and a family that taught me what real courage looks like. If sharing our story can help others find their own courage, then I think we should do it. I agree, Minjun said firmly. Father always says that our past doesn't define us, but how we choose to grow from it does. This is how we grow. Jae-sung looked at his family, his eyes bright with unshed tears. How did I get so lucky? How did I deserve all of you? You didn't deserve us, Muna said with a gentle smile. None of us deserved each other. But we chose each other anyway, and that's what makes it special. That evening, after the children were in bed, Muna and Jae-sung stood on their terrace overlooking the ocean. The stars were brilliant in the clear night sky, and the sound of waves provided a peaceful soundtrack to their reflection. Do you ever regret it? Jae-sung asked quietly. Giving up your life in America, staying with someone as complicated as me? Muna turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. Never. Not even once. You know what I regret? I regret all the years before I met you, when I didn't know this kind of love was possible. I regret not trusting my instincts sooner when I first saw how lonely you and Minjun were. But staying with you, loving you, building this life? That's the best decision I've ever made. Even knowing what my hands have done? The blood I can never wash away? Especially knowing that. Because I also know what those same hands have built. A son who's compassionate and brave. A daughter who's growing up knowing she's loved beyond measure. Youth centers and education programs and second chances for people who thought they were beyond redemption. You did that, Jae-sung. You took all that darkness and alchemized it into light. Jae-sung pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I love you, Muna. More than I have words to express. I love you too, she whispered against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. For all my days and beyond. They stood there in comfortable silence, two people from completely different worlds who'd found each other against all odds. A Korean man trying to escape his violent past and an American woman trying to escape her painful present had collided in a Seoul penthouse and created something neither had thought possible, a real family, built on honesty and trust and love that refused to give up even when the world said it was impossible. The next morning, Muna woke to find Minjun standing in their bedroom doorway, his face serious. Mom, can we talk? He asked in English, which he still used when discussing emotional topics. Of course, sweetheart. Muna sat up, careful not to wake Jae-sung, and followed Minjun to the living room. They sat together on the sofa, and Minjun was quiet for a long moment before speaking. I've been thinking about what Father said yesterday, about the documentary. And? I want to be part of it. I want to talk about what it was like growing up in that world, and what it's been like watching Father change. I want other kids who are living in dangerous situations to know that it can get better. Muna's heart swelled with pride. That's a very mature decision, Minjun. But you understand that once you put your story out there, you can't take it back? People will have opinions, some of them not kind. I know. But you taught me something important when I was little. You said that remembering people and telling their stories keeps them alive in our hearts. Well, I think telling our story keeps hope alive for other people. When did you get so wise? Muna asked, pulling him into a hug. I learned from the best, Minjun said, hugging her back. You and Father, you taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. Later that day, they gathered as a family to officially make the decision. The documentary would happen, and they would face whatever came with the same unity that had carried them through every previous challenge. There's one more thing, Jae-sung said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, different from the one that had held Muna's engagement ring. Minjun, come here. The boy approached, curiosity evident on his face. Jae-sung opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring engraved with Korean characters. This was going to be mine when I turned 18, Jae-sung explained, his voice thick with emotion. My father gave it to me before he died. It's been passed down through 5 generations of Park men. And now I want you to have it. But I'm only 12, Minjun said, confused. You'll wear it when you're older. But I'm giving it to you now because I want you to understand something. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. Choice does. You are my son in every way that matters, and I want you to carry this symbol of our family's legacy. Not the criminal legacy, but the legacy of love and redemption that we're building together. Minjun took the ring with trembling hands, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, father. I'll honor it. I promise. I know you will, Jae-sung said, embracing his son tightly. You already make me proud every single day. Watching them, Muna felt her own tears fall. This moment, this beautiful moment of father and son choosing each other again and again, was everything she'd hoped for when she'd first seen a lonely little boy in a Seoul penthouse. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The documentary filming, the adoption process for their new daughter, a beautiful 5-year-old girl named Jiwoo who'd been in the foster system for 3 years, and Jae-sung's continued work on his redemption projects. Through it all, their family remained their anchor, their source of strength and joy. The documentary premiered at the Busan International Film Festival to critical acclaim. It told Jae-sung's story unflinchingly, showing both the darkness of his past and the light of his present. Minjun's interview, where he spoke about watching his father transform and learning that people could change, became one of the most powerful moments in the film. But it was Muna's interview that resonated most deeply with viewers. Sitting in their Jeju Island home, surrounded by photos of their multicultural family, she'd spoken about love that crosses boundaries. People ask me how I could fall in love with someone with Jae-sung's past, she'd said to the camera. But that question misses the point entirely. I didn't fall in love with his past. I fell in love with his present, with his determination to be better, with the father he is to our children. And I fell in love with his future, with everything we're building together. Some people will say that's naive, that a man like him can't truly change. But those people don't see what I see every day. They don't see him reading bedtime stories to our daughters, or teaching Minjun how to be strong and gentle at the same time. They don't see him waking up at 3 in the morning to comfort a child having nightmares, or the way he still holds my hand when he's scared that he doesn't deserve this happiness. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better, and then choosing them every day even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That's what Jae-sung and I have. That's what we're teaching our children. And if our story can help even one person believe in second chances, believe in redemption, believe in love that refuses to give up, then every difficulty we've faced will have been worth it. The documentary's success led to speaking engagements, interviews, and eventually, Muna started writing a book about their journey. But through it all, they remained grounded in what mattered most, their family, their love, and their commitment to building a life defined not by where they'd come from, but by where they were going together. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Jae-sung surprised Muna with a renewal of vows ceremony on the beach near their home. Their children stood beside them as they promised once again to love and support each other through whatever came next. 5 years ago, Jae-sung said, holding both Muna's hands as the sunset painted the sky behind them, "You walked into my life and changed everything. You taught me that redemption is possible, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, and that family is built on choice and commitment, not just blood. You've given me 3 beautiful children, a purpose beyond survival, and a love I never thought I deserved. And every day, I wake up grateful that a brave, beautiful woman from Georgia decided that a broken man from Seoul was worth saving." Muna smiled through her tears. "You weren't broken. You were just lost. And I didn't save you. We saved each other. You taught me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and loving anyway. You taught me that home isn't a place, it's the people you choose to build a life with. I came to Korea looking for a job. What I found was my soulmate, my family, and my purpose. So thank you, Park Jae-sung, for letting a curious stranger into your heart, for trusting me with your son, and for showing me every day what real love looks like. As they kissed, their children cheered, and the small gathering of family and close friends applauded. The sun set over the ocean, painting everything in gold and pink, and Muna thought about how far they'd all come. From a Seoul penthouse where a 7-year-old boy had looked at a room full of elegant socialites and chosen the maid who smiled at him, to this beach where that same boy, now 12, stood proud and happy with his father, his mother, and his 2 sisters. From a powerful crime lord who thought love was a weakness, to a man who'd learned it was the greatest strength of all. From a grieving woman running from pain, to a woman who'd found purpose in the most unexpected place. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real, messy, complicated, and absolutely true. It was proof that people could change, that love could bridge any gap, and that families came in all forms, bound together not by expectations or conventions, but by choice and commitment and love that refused to quit. So if you're watching this and you're still here with us, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Your support means everything to us. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what you thought about Jae-sung and Muna's journey. Do you believe in second chances? Have you ever loved someone against all odds? Share your stories with us in the comments. We love reading every single one, and your engagement helps us continue creating these powerful, emotional stories about love that overcomes everything. And remember, whether you're in Seoul or Georgia, New York or Nairobi, love speaks every language and crosses every boundary. Sometimes the family you choose is even more powerful than the family you're born into. Sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the ones that change us the most. Thank you for being part of our Korean Mafia lovers family. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep believing in second chances, and keep believing that every person deserves redemption if they're willing to work for it. Don't forget to turn on those notifications so you never miss our next story. We'll see you soon with another emotional journey that will make you believe in the power of love all over again.